Utopia, the oldest text-based MMO on the internet. Once the crowning glory of free internet text-based games, now in ruins. Is it beyond saving? Have we left it too late? These are the questions that, in all honesty, as host of this show, have weighed heavily on me. There have been moments, even since I launched the show, where I doubted my commitment. Well, Utopia, I'm happy to announce that we have new owners of the game. And with that, a new hope that our game will survive. My promise to you, community, is that I'll stay on as host of this show, as long as you make the effort to help our glorious game grow once again. Without your help, there is no chance of survival. The time is now. We have waited too long in the shadows. We now run this shit. Get hyped. Promote the game. Tell every person you can they need to either come back or start playing. And with a push from everyone, we can get our players back in, and we can have a large community that we're proud of. We cannot wait any longer. This is our last chance. There are no other options. We all need to help make Utopia great again. Welcome, community, to this very special installment of Triggered. Today, we talk all things related to the new ownership and future of the game. Sitting across from me in the virtual world again is the amazing Kygal. Welcome, Kygal.
Thank you.
Also with us today are the new owners of Utopia, Dave and Jeff. Welcome, gents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First off, I just want to say a big thank you from the community. We are very happy to have new owners who hopefully intend to help grow the game. So thank you. Now, the first thing I want to get to is, how do we pronounce your company name and what specifically does it stand for?
I think it's pretty straightforward. Muga, make Utopia great again. I think it was pretty simple when we first got together. When we all thought, what should we, kind of name it? It was kind of just for fun at first, and then it just stuck.
Jeff, the next question I have for you is, what immediate and possible noticeable changes are or will be made, and why?
That's a great question. There are a lot of things, and it would be really hard to list out all of the things we've talked about and thought about over the last year. I would say that some of the biggest things that we'll be working on in the short term involve making the game more friendly to new players. So, one of the complaints that new players have when they come to Utopia today is it's very hard to figure out what things are, where things are. I built a lot of homes because people need to live in homes, right? And I didn't look and see how the bonuses on buildings work. And so, some sort of in-game tool to help walk players through buildings and sort of basic questions of how the game functions. I think that's one of the first things we're going to be prioritizing. Alongside that, I think for more experienced players, we're going to be rolling out a return of the Genesis server to give us a place to test larger mechanics changes that we're thinking about as they relate to honoring games and things like that.
Okay, so Dave, the next question is to you. You mentioned in the announcement that there'll be some downtime over the coming weeks. What's the likelihood that the game will go down again for that same amount of time, which probably impacted a few wars, or is it going to be a bit more smooth coming in the coming weeks?
We expect that it should be much smoother in the next few weeks. We don't actually anticipate any serious downtimes, but with the transfer of everything, which is what the downtimes were today, we don't exactly know what to expect when we start to roll things out and bring things online. Muga is using Amazon Web Services to host the game servers. Can
you expand just a little bit more on the speed of the server? Do you think the actual overall gameplay is going to be quicker, or is it going to be noticeably different at all?
Essentially, we're using the same server platform that it was hosted on before in the interim while we look at going to, better performing servers.
Sure.
Yeah, so Dave got that exactly right. The initial migration from Sean and Brian's Utopia to our Utopia is using the exact same servers on Amazon Web Services. But we are looking at upgrading the server to something with a little bit more power behind it to help with some of the issues that we see relating to speed.
In the initial announcement, you guys talked about the mobile app and official support for that. This is that directed at you again, Jeff. Are you planning to work with the original app creator, Josh, or are you going to create your own individual app and launch it officially with the game?
We have thought about both of those options. I think the next step, frankly, is for us to have a conversation with Josh and see where he is and how open he is to working with us.
Talking again about the announcement, you mentioned, this is towards you, Dave, you mentioned an overhaul of the instructional area of the game. Can you go into a little bit more depth about that?
Yeah, we want to implement something that will allow new users to be walked through a lot of the aspects of the game that they will encounter so that they know exactly how they work without having to go to the community or find something in the forums or going off site. They'll just be instructed on everything that they should be doing when they first start and have a real chance to actually make it in the game.
Sure. Kygal, as a current monarch, as I'm a current monarch in a smaller kingdom, or you have been in the past, what are your thoughts on this? The instructional area of the game obviously needs improvement. Utopia, when you look at it, it doesn't look really interesting. It's quite, well, it's got a semi-decent learning curve to it. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that's a huge part where they need to work on? They need to teach people how to play the game before we can actually promote it too hard?
I think that's the only way you can promote it, is to have someone that's willing to teach the newbies that come along. That's the only thing that kept me in the game from the start, was IRC and having people there that I could learn from that would take the time to teach me.
Sure.
So that if you're willing to put the time into that, and if you have people that can teach others, then I think you can easily grow the player base.
I agree, totally. Moving on to some community questions here, and I apologise if they're out of order and a little bit random. The first one is, this one's from Morgram. He says, or he asks, what steps will you be taking to bring new and old players back to the game? This one's at you, Dave.
Well, new players and old players, we plan to send out some email blasts, hoping that the new ownership will excite people to come back, see what's going on. Word of mouth is a great thing. We want to really see if we can get people excited about bringing in real life friends who hopefully will bring in other real life friends to just have a fun experience.
We need the community to pass out word that there is new ownership of the game. Try and bring all those old players back. Try and get them to send out information to their friends, pass it on, get them back in, get them excited. You mentioned earlier, Jeff, that you guys are setting up a Genesis server for testing and various different reasons. Morgan went on to ask, what are the chances in the future of setting up a war tournament server again? And I'll say this now, is there a magic number of players you can give us where we need to achieve as a community where we can get our own war tournament server up? So is there a number? Is there 30,000? So
that's a good question. I would sort of have to look at the numbers and see if there were a magical number for a war server. What I will say is, at the moment, we are not planning to do a war server. I know there was a lot of custom code that went into it that we would have to look at and really sort of understand how that worked before we can assess whether it's something that's feasible or not.
Yeah, okay, sure. Oh, this is a random question. Shasta asks, will you guys make orcs sane again so they can merely break provinces that are 175% of their net worth and not 300%? What he's stating is they're overpowered in their hitting abilities. What are your plans with them? Do you have any?
Well, I think across the board, we want to implement changes that will make the game more fun for everybody. You can interpret that however you wish. We want to balance the game and, just bring back things that, made it more fun to play. And orc being able to break somebody 300% his net worth isn't really fun for anybody. So
continuing on, do you think you guys will stop nerfing thief mages? He believes that they've been nerfed for so long that it's making them suck more and more. Do you guys agree? Do you think there's going to be a stop to it? Do you think reevaluate every race personality and go from there? Is it going to be a huge change like that, or are we going to continue down the path of just some minor changes straight onto the personalities and races?
We'll probably see some more major changes, particularly on Genesis. However, I think there has to be a lot of evaluation involved in how the balance works, and it's tricky because if, wars quickly become less fun if there's a situation where the bulk of the players are attackers, and they just can't attack large subset of enemy provinces that are the same size as them.
Avenger asks, do you have any plan for Facebook app integration?
Facebook integration is something that we've discussed. It's not on the immediate horizon, but I think it goes along with the official app as well. You know, how we plan to deal with Josh and getting something rolled out that would be an official Utopia app, and then looking to integrate something that would take quite a bit of time, perhaps. It wouldn't be something on the near horizon to look into.
Yeah, sure. Next question, Chanane asks, why did you acquire Utopia? So I guess I'll start with you, Jeff. Why did you guys buy it?
You know, I've been playing Utopia on and off for a very long time, and particularly when I was in college, I spent a lot of time playing Utopia, and there's a lot of fond memories about how much fun it was to play the game. And, you know, if you look at Utopia today, it's a lot smaller community. The community seems to be more mean to each other, I guess is the way of saying it. And it just feels like it's a disappointment that it's the way that it is, and that there's a lot that can be done to make it better and bring in sort of some of that fresh blood that Utopia really needs to survive.
I take it you agree with this, Dave. That's the reason why you got involved as well?
Yeah, essentially the idea that both have a passion for the game. However, that developed, long ago by generating relationships with all the different people that you play with, that some relationships a lot of people have carried on for many years and brought into real life. So added a lot of value to my life outside of the game, and to be able to give back to the game, like Jeff mentioned, in its current state as it is, it's not the same as it was, and we really want to try to get it back to some sort of resemblance of what it used to be.
As a long-time player and a long-time Monarch, Kygal, what are your thoughts about the initial acquisition of this company by Dave and Jeff? And
Well,
do you think it's going to excite the player base? I hope it does. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, I'm excited because I've always felt like the game would benefit more from people like Jeff and David that are hardcore players that have been in it for years. They know what the game used to be at its best, and they know what it is right now. So I think if anyone can fix it and get more players in to build up the player base, it would be these two.
Yeah, I agree. Is your company a new enterprise, or is this something that you guys have been working on in the past together, or did you guys just come together just for this purpose to get a hold of Utopia?
This was the sole purpose for Muga. We started it for this sole purpose, and that's how Jeff and I got together.
Do you guys plan to evolve it further at all, or is just the focus right now? Is the focus right now on just bringing Utopia back to its former glory, essentially?
The focus right now is 100% on Utopia.
The next question is, and again, it's from Chanane. Is Muga your full-time job, both of you?
No.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, guys. So Sean asks, has there been any talks to address the kick from game ticking? I think he's talking about when you tick and it just won't log you in. I don't think that's a problem. I think that just is dealing with the actual tick. Is that going to stay the same, the ticking every hour thing?
We certainly don't love the way that the tick works now, but the logic behind it makes a degree of sense. The old tick system was what was called passive ticking, where it didn't update your province unless something was happening to your province. The issue with passive ticking is you might get meteor showers with your troops out, and then your troops get home and you log in, and you just got 10 ticks of meteor showers on your troops home. And so maybe that's okay, maybe that's not okay, but what it means is it changes the way the game works a little bit. I think to some extent the active ticking that exists now is good for that reason, because it prevents that kind of thing. It makes it very clear. The flip side to that is, yes, it does mean that there's 20 or 30 seconds of downtime at the start of a tick or an hour.
I think it's a necessary evil. I would prefer it this way than the old way. I know a lot of people disagree, but it's more fair this way. At least everyone's down as opposed to just randomly hitting that button and hoping for the best. Dave, my next question is you. Will there be any new coding done in the game in the near future, or alternatively, long-term future?
Well, new coding is pretty vague. I'm not quite sure what we're asking here. Sean and Brian spent quite a lot of time and recoded the entire game in the early years that they had it. There's not much need to recode it from what they did. There are certain issues that are apparent based on the things that they did do, based on the time that they did it, having new things that have come out that could possibly solve certain problems with a different sort of method. But as far as recoding the whole game, I mean, I don't really see that as something that will happen anytime soon. But certainly if there's a way for us to fix certain problems that are in the game right now, we will definitely be looking to do that.
And specifically, I'll go ahead and mention the oops bug. I know a lot of people have been asking about that lately. While it is not entirely clear that the oops bug is easily addressed, we intend to do things to reduce the frequency of it in the short term and look at resolving it in the long term.
Yeah, beautiful. The largest obstacle Utopia faces is it's not very beginner-friendly or user-friendly to begin with. Unless one comes into a kingdom where there's the chat channel and teammates that are able and willing to help daily, a player can go a year and still not really grasp the total mechanics or even the basic mechanics and or strategy of the game. Moving forward, what changes or resources will be brought to address this? I think he's trying to address perhaps third-party integration like the Monkbot or Stingerbot or Intel-type sites.
Yeah, so I think there are sort of two things there. The first one is sort of, as I mentioned earlier, you're a new player, you came back to the game, or you found the game for the first time, you log in, you go to your building page, you don't really have any way of making sense of what's on your building page, right? And, what's a reasonable draft rate? Is it 80% the way that most players play? Or is it more like 5 or 10%, which might be, fairly high in a real country? And so, part of it is having a tour so that when someone comes to Utopia for the first time, there is that little set of, pop-up boxes that sort of walk them through gameplay and introduce them to many of the features. And that's something that will take a fair amount of time to build and test and frankly to get right, because not everyone reacts to everything the same way. And so I think that's part of it. But, you ask about, Monkbot or StingerNet or any of these sort of Intel sites, we are looking at ways of improving the existing Intel store that Sean and Brian built into the game. And we'll look at sort of like the best way of making those better and to some extent incorporating a number of those features that the outside sites use into the game itself.
As a long-time player, Kygal, do you think this is an important thing to bring into the game? I think it's hugely important to make the game grow.
What's that, like the built-in tools, the Monkbot, and
just make it user-friendly, more ways to share and store intel, more ways to communicate better with your kingdom, those sorts of things?
Right. I think it is. When I started, Utopia Pimp was a very big thing, and had it not been for that, I didn't have access to Monkbot or anything like that. So Pimp is what we all use, but it makes a big difference in game when you can share your intel and everything else with your entire kingdom.
All right. So random question here from Nim. And actually, I agree with him in this question, or him or her. Are you planning to bring back the proper undead at all? Perhaps on the Genesis server, as in your province dies, you come back as an undead. Any chances we could ever see that again in the future?
Well, one of the things we would very much like to do with the Genesis server is make it a test server like it originally started out. Test weird things, test fun things, bring back some, throwback ages. There's a lot of people that are interested in that type of stuff. So anything's on the table, especially for Genesis. And, I think without giving too much away, we'd like to keep some of that stuff, keep people anxious and anticipating what might come.
Fantastic. Band of Horses, also known as the Utopian Voice of Reason, asks, will we get to keep Bishop and Palin?
Yes.
So what are their roles going to be moving forward? Are they staying the same? Is Bishop still going to be a game, mod or admin? And Palin just work on the forums, the moderation?
So obviously we haven't had extensive conversations with anyone, or many people, I should say, prior to today. Having said that, we have briefly discussed with Palom, and he's interested in staying on as a forum moderator, and we're happy for that to continue. We think he does a great job. With Bishop, we have spoken with him about his role as a game admin. Obviously, given our backgrounds as players of Utopia, there are pieces of his role that we feel like, make sense for us to be involved in to some extent at least. So, Bishop's role will change a little in that it will become more of, well, I should say it'll be less of Bishop deciding on the changes and then them being implemented and more of, multiple people working together to come up with what the best changes are and then to get them implemented. So functionally, Bishop will still be heavily involved in rule enforcement and in changes.
It's business as usual, at least short term, with the possibility of some changes in-game coming up. But as it sits right now, Utopia will just continue as normal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Fantastic. Dave, I've got a question here from Feast, and he asked, will there be more features that people can buy? And if so, is there going to be any sort of shop overhaul? Is there going to be anything added at all?
This is not something that we've extensively discussed. Our focus has always been, it's been about 10 months, the whole process, and throughout the entire time, any discussions we ever have about making the game better doesn't really include shop items or things for people to purchase. It's really about making
more game promotion.
Yeah, making the game a more fun place for the existing people to have more fun and for people that join to want to stay.
That's the biggest thing. Getting people to join or new players to join is one of our biggest problems, I believe. The next question again is from Feast. So Jeff, will you work on the ceasefire system? Do you think it works right now? Is there any room for improvement? Is there a way of making a binding ceasefire agreement in-game, perhaps?
Is it something that we can do? Certainly. I don't know whether it's something that we have thought about really. I think the stance of the past that the ability to break ceasefires exists and is fine and is potentially necessary for community policing, makes a degree of sense to me.
The next question I have is from Meat, and he asks, will the game remain free and not pay to win?
Oh, yes, of course.
I think as far as the pay to win, I like the features they have right now, the invites, the sitting credits, all of those are used very heavily. So if that gives a chance for the owners to make $1 or $2, that's really good, but it's not really paid to win. It's just a feature I think should have been there for some time.
Yeah,
but I don't think the guys plan to turn it into a pay to win. If they do, then it definitely would kill the game. But I like the features they have right now that you can pay to get.
Yeah, sure.
This reminds me of a question that I have, actually. I'd be interested in hearing from the two of you.
Sure.
What do you feel about the old refer a friend bonus? So to remind you, the old bonus was once an age, if you sent an email or functionally gave Utopia 5 emails to send to, you got 15 free acres.
Yeah, I agree with it. I don't think 15 free acres is going to change the game in any dramatic way. And I think if it's going to promote the possibility of any player increase, it's a good idea.
Right, I agree.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I think we've covered everything as far as what I had came up with. Word of mouth is definitely the best way to advertise, and the more we can get that out there, the better. And I know as far as when I started, if we can build the IRC community around the game and kind of weed out the trolls where newcomers actually have a chance to learn how to play the game and play it competitively, then you can grow it from there. But if you bring in a newbie right now, they're going to eat them alive. So they need somewhere where they can learn how to play the game and get their feet on the ground so that we can have more competitive players and build the player base from there.
I got a question for you guys, actually.
Sure. My
question is, do you guys have any plans long term, if the player base picks up, to possibly actually advertise the game?
That's a good question. I think our initial plan is to focus some on SEO. Sean and Brian didn't really do anything on the SEO side of things to try and bring new players into the game. And so, we're looking partly, frankly, at things like this and, using more of the blog to try and bring in some of that SEO traffic. After we've spent a little bit of time working on the SEO strategy and understanding sort of what terms tend to convert to new players, we will take a look at some of the paid advertising.
Fantastic. It's good news. The community loves to hear that.
I think, one of the things we just want everybody to know is that, part of being players for as long as we have been and being part of the community, I've been part of the top, I've been part of the lower tier. We want everybody to know that the game is meant to be fun for all the different areas of the game. And we understand the differences between hyperactivity and the casual player. And we want to do things that will allow everybody to experience the game the way that they want and enjoy it in that sense. And that we also want people to know that, we're around. Before, Sean and Brian were in the background taking care of the game. Bishop was the sort of front person. And we're around. We're going to be listening to the community. We're going to be interacting with the community. There's a lot of stuff we want to do to just show that, we care about the game, where it's headed, and how it gets there.
Oh, that's fantastic news. Have you got any final things you want to say too, Jeff? Is there anything you want to say to the community? How reachable are you guys? Are you guys going to pick up on this slow reply time in regards to support emails? Anything like that?
Well, I think there will be a difference in response time to support emails when you go from having one person doing support as, a part-time thing to 3 people doing support. And so, I would expect to see a pickup in the response rate of support requests. And, we are very interested in sort of listening to the community and understanding the concerns that everyone has about the direction of the game so that we can make sure that we're moving in the right direction.
Great news again. Anything finally you want to say, Kygal, before we head off?
No, I'm good, other than congratulations. And I'm really excited about the future of the game. So I'm excited to see what you guys do with it.
I am too. And yeah, we're really excited as a community. So thank you very much for jumping on the show today. Thank you very much for buying the game. We can't wait to see what you guys do with it.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Right, thanks, guys.
Bye.
We moving smooth, we moving fast. You're tuned in to Triggered Utopia's podcast. We moving smooth, we moving fast. You're tuned in to Triggered Utopia's podcast. It's the Triggered Utopia's podcast. We coming at you smooth and we moving real fast. Attacking, defending, you know how we do. It's the gaming podcast set up just for you. We moving smooth, we moving fast. You're tuned in to Triggered Utopia's podcast.